The cold bit through her Armani suit before the pain registered. Cassandra Monroe lay crumpled on the 22nd floor, half her body refusing commands. Her brain screamed. 3:15 a.m. The hallway stretched into shadows, fluorescent lights humming their indifferent song. Her fingers clawed at polished marble, dragging her nowhere. "I can't walk," she gasped, the words dissolving into empty air thick with cleaning solution and desperation. Her phone glowed inside the office, 30 feet of impossible distance. The silence pressed against her eardrums until metal wheels scraped tile somewhere in the darkness. A janitor's cart rolled into the light, pushed by hands that had scrubbed these floors for months. Hudson Blake froze mid-step, his eyes meeting hers. He dropped to his knees beside her, work-worn fingers steady against her trembling shoulder. "I've got you," he said, voice low and certain, dialing 911 with his free hand. But in the space between the call and the sirens, he leaned close and whispered something that would shatter every wall she'd built, because the man she'd never noticed was about to teach her the one thing her corner office never could: how to stand when your legs betray you. Cassandra had been staring at spreadsheets when the first wave hit. Numbers blurred into abstract shapes, and her left hand stopped obeying. She'd pushed back from the desk, thinking coffee would fix it, thinking rest was for people who hadn't clawed their way from a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens to the top floor of a Manhattan high-rise. The second wave dropped her like a stone. She remembered the floor rushing up, the crack of her skull against marble, the metallic taste of fear flooding her mouth. Then darkness folded in, and she was swimming through tar, trying to reach the surface. When consciousness returned, only half of her came with it. Hudson's voice cut through the fog, steady and unhurried. "Ambulance is 2 minutes out. Can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you understand." Her right hand twitched in his palm, the only part of her body that seemed to remember how to respond. He kept talking, filling the terrible silence with observations about her breathing, her pulse, details she couldn't process, but found strangely anchoring. The fluorescent lights above formed halos in her swimming vision. She tried to speak, to explain she had a presentation at 8, that the Berkshire account needed her signature, that she couldn't afford this interruption. What came out was a slurred whisper. "Can't move." "I know," Hudson said, and something in his tone made her focus on his face for the first time. He was younger than she'd assumed, maybe 30, with crow's feet that suggested he smiled more than circumstances warranted. "You're having a stroke, left side, from what I can see. But you called for help, which means you're fighting. That's good." He adjusted his jacket under her head, creating a makeshift pillow. The fabric smelled like laundry detergent and something else. Maybe cinnamon. "The paramedics will take care of you. You're not alone." The sirens grew louder, echoing up the stairwell. Red and blue lights began strobing through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the hallway in emergency colors. Hudson stayed beside her, one hand maintaining contact with her shoulder, grounding her to something solid, while her body turned traitor. "I'm going to ride with you," he said, not asking permission. "Someone should be there when you wake up again." Cassandra wanted to protest. She didn't need charity from the cleaning staff, didn't need witnesses to her weakness, but the words wouldn't form. The paramedics burst through the stairwell doors, and the night dissolved into urgent voices and the smell of antiseptic and the strange weightlessness of being lifted onto a stretcher. The last thing she heard before the ambulance doors closed was Hudson's voice, quiet but insistent, speaking to one of the EMTs. "Her name is Cassandra Monroe. She's 31. She was working alone when it happened." He knew her name. She'd passed him in these hallways for months, had probably complained about the noise of his cleaning cart during late-night calls, and she'd never once asked his. The realization hit harder than the stroke. As the vehicle lurched into motion, She caught a glimpse of him through the rear window, standing under the building's entrance lights, watching them go. His expression wasn't pity. It was something else entirely. Recognition, maybe. Or the particular sadness of someone who'd stood in similar wreckage before. St. Catherine's Hospital smelled like every hospital. Disinfectant masking decay, hope masking fear. Cassandra woke in stages, consciousness returning in fragments, white ceiling tiles, beeping monitors, the weight of blankets across her chest. She tried to sit up and discovered her left side had gone missing. Panic flooded hot and immediate. A nurse appeared, calm hands pressing her back against pillows. "Easy, Ms. Monroe. You're safe. You had an ischemic stroke affecting your left motor cortex. Dr. Reeves will explain everything, but right now, you need to rest." The words were professionally kind and absolutely devastating. Stroke. The thing that happened to other people, older people who didn't run 5 miles every morning and eat kale salads for lunch. Dr. Reeves arrived an hour later with charts and carefully calibrated optimism. 50-something, gray at the temples, the kind of face that had delivered bad news so often it had learned to do it gently. "You're lucky," he said, which felt like an obscene joke. "The EMTs got to you within the golden window. You'll recover most function, maybe all of it, but it's going to take time. Physical therapy, occupational therapy, probably 4 to 6 months of intensive work." He talked about neural pathways and neuroplasticity, about the brain's remarkable ability to rewire itself. Cassandra heard different words underneath. Months, intensive maybe. Her company was preparing for the biggest acquisition in its history. The board meeting was in 6 weeks. She didn't have months. "When can I go back to work?" she asked, the question coming out slurred but understandable. Dr. Reeves set down his clipboard. "Ms. Monroe, you can't walk right now. You can barely lift your left arm. We're talking about relearning basic motor functions before we discuss spreadsheets." He softened slightly. "I know this isn't what you want to hear, but pushing too hard, too fast, that's what got you here. Your blood pressure was through the roof. When's the last time you slept more than 4 hours?" She couldn't remember. Weeks, maybe months. Sleep was for people who hadn't built an empire from nothing, who didn't have investors watching their every quarterly report, who could afford to be merely good instead of exceptional. "I need to make calls," she said. "My assistant needs to know." Dr. Reeves held up a hand. "Your assistant knows you're here. She's been calling every hour. But right now, your only job is healing. Everything else can wait." He stood to leave, then paused. "That man who came in the ambulance with you, Hudson Blake, he's been in the waiting room since you arrived. Hasn't left. Says he'll stay as long as you need someone." Cassandra closed her eyes against unexpected tears. She'd built her life on self-sufficiency, on never needing anyone, on being the person others depended on. The idea that some janitor she'd never noticed felt obligated to babysit her recovery was humiliating. "Tell him to go home," she said. Dr. Reeves nodded, but something in his expression suggested he wouldn't deliver that message. After he left, Cassandra stared at the ceiling and tried to wiggle her left toes. Nothing happened. She tried again, concentrating until sweat beaded on her forehead. Still nothing. The panic returned, sharper this time, edged with something that felt dangerously close to despair. On the 3rd day, they made her try to walk. A physical therapist named Angela, aggressively cheerful in purple scrubs, helped her to the edge of the bed. "We'll take it slow," Angela promised. "Just stand for me. I've got you." Cassandra planted her right foot on the floor, then tried to move her left. Her leg responded like meat, dead weight that belonged to someone else. Angela's arms tightened around her waist. "Put your weight on me. I won't let you fall." They managed 3 seconds of standing before Cassandra's leg buckled. Angela caught her, easing her back to sitting, but the damage was done. "I can't walk," Cassandra said, and heard the echo of those same words from the hallway 3 nights ago. The difference was that then, she'd believed it was temporary. Now, staring at her useless leg, she wasn't sure. Angela left her alone after that, promising to return later, suggesting rest. Cassandra sat on the edge of the bed, hospital gown pooling around her, and let herself break. The sobs came ugly and raw. The kind of crying she hadn't allowed herself since she was 12, and her father left, and her mother worked 3 jobs to keep their apartment. She'd promised herself then that she'd never be that powerless again, never be at someone else's mercy, never need anything from anyone. And here she was, unable to walk to the bathroom without help, unable to dress herself, unable to do the one thing human beings were supposed to do, stand on their own 2 feet. The tears kept coming, and she didn't try to stop them. There was no one to see, no one who mattered. "Mind if I come in?" The voice from the doorway made her jump. Hudson Blake stood there, still in his janitor's uniform, holding a piece of paper covered in crayon. "Visiting hours don't start for another hour, but I know one of the nurses. She said you might need company." He stepped inside without waiting for permission, pulled up the visitor's chair, and sat. "My son Finn made you something." He held out the drawing, a stick figure girl standing up from a wheelchair, surrounded by stars and smiley faces. At the top, in a child's careful printing, "Get well soon." He's 6. When I told him I met someone who was learning to walk again, he remembered when he was little. "Thought you might like to know you're not alone in this." Cassandra took the drawing with her working hand, unable to speak past the knot in her throat. Hudson settled back in the chair, and for a long moment, they sat in silence. Not the awkward silence of strangers, but something quieter, almost companionable. "Why are you here?" she finally asked. He considered the question, head tilted slightly. "Because when I found you that night, you said, 'Please.' People like you, people who run companies, who live in corner offices. You don't usually say please to people like me. It seemed important." He smiled, small and sad. "Also, I know what it's like to be scared. My son was born 3 months premature. Doctors said he might not make it, and if he did, he might never walk normally. I sat in a room like this for weeks, watching him fight for every breath. But he's okay now," Cassandra said, clutching the drawing like a lifeline. Hudson nodded. "He is. Took 2 years of therapy, surgeries, more scares than I can count. But he's okay. Runs everywhere now. Drives me crazy, actually." His expression shifted, became more serious. "Here's the thing nobody tells you about recovery. It's not about being strong, it's about being stubborn. About waking up every day and doing the work even when your body screams at you to quit." Finn learned that before he could talk. Sometimes I think that's his superpower. He doesn't know giving up is an option. "I don't know how to do that," Cassandra admitted. "All my life, I've been able to fix problems by working harder, thinking faster, outmaneuvering everyone else. But I can't outthink my way out of this." Hudson leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Maybe that's not the worst thing. Maybe sometimes the solution isn't working harder. Maybe it's learning to accept help." He stood, tucking the drawing carefully on her bedside table, among the flower arrangements from colleagues who'd never visited. "I have to get to work, but I'll come back tomorrow, if you want me to." Cassandra found herself nodding, surprising herself. "Why?" Hudson paused at the door, glanced back. "Because you need a reason. To fight, I mean. People don't get better in isolation. They get better because someone's waiting for them on the other side." Then he was gone, leaving her alone with a child's crayon drawing and a seed of something that felt dangerously like hope. They discharged her after 10 days. Cassandra moved through the paperwork in a fog, signing forms she barely read, while a social worker explained home care options. She'd need someone there, at least at night, in case of falls or complications. Her assistant Paige had arranged for a daytime nurse, a competent woman named Ruth, who would arrive at 8 each morning. But the nights, those were the problem. Paige had made calls, contacted agencies, but everyone wanted 2 weeks' notice or charged rates that made even Cassandra wince. "I can manage alone," she said, knowing it was a lie. The social worker gave her a look that suggested she'd heard that particular lie many times before. "Actually," Hudson's voice came from the doorway, "I might have a solution." He'd appeared in her room with increasing frequency over the past week, usually after his shift ended, bringing things she didn't know she needed. Audiobooks, a phone charger, takeout from the Thai place near her apartment building. "I work the night custodial shift at your building, 9 to 6. I could come by after, stay until Ruth arrives. It's just sitting, really, making sure you're safe." He addressed the social worker, not Cassandra. "I have EMT training from my military service. References, if you need them." The social worker looked relieved. That would be ideal. "Ms. Monroe?" Every instinct screamed at Cassandra to refuse. She didn't take charity. She didn't need a babysitter. She definitely didn't need some janitor she barely knew camping out in her penthouse. But Angela's voice echoed in her head from that morning's therapy session. Pride is what puts people back in the hospital. "How much?" Cassandra asked. Hudson named a figure that was insultingly low. She doubled it. He started to protest, and she cut him off. "Non-negotiable. You'll be working, and labor has value. Take it, or the offer's rescinded." Something flickered in his expression. Maybe amusement. Maybe respect. "Deal. I'll need a key." Paige produced one from somewhere, and just like that, Cassandra's carefully controlled life acquired another variable. The ride home felt surreal. Paige had hired a medical transport van, complete with a driver who knew how to operate the wheelchair lift. Cassandra watched the city slide past through tinted windows, seeing it from a new angle, literally. At wheelchair height, the world looked different. Curb cuts she'd never noticed became essential. Stairs became impassable barriers. People on the street looked through her, or worse, stared with a kind of performative sympathy that made her want to scream. By the time they reached her building, she was exhausted from just being looked at. Her apartment felt alien. The minimalist design she'd loved for its clean lines and uncluttered spaces now mocked her. Everything important was just out of reach. The remote control sat on a shelf. Her favorite books lined a case she'd need a ladder to access. The bathroom, with its rainfall shower and separate soaking tub, might as well have been an obstacle course. Ruth helped her navigate the first day, pointing out hazards with professional cheerfulness, but Cassandra could see the problems piling up. She'd designed this space for a woman who could walk, who could reach, who could move through the world without assistance. That woman no longer existed. At 9:30 that night, her doorbell rang. Hudson stood in the hallway with a backpack and a thermos. "Coffee," he explained. "Long night ahead?" He stepped inside, took in the sprawling penthouse with its floor-to-ceiling windows and designer furniture, and let out a low whistle. Nice place. Then he spotted her sitting in the wheelchair by the window, staring out at the city lights, and his expression gentled. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine," Cassandra lied. Hudson set his thermos on the kitchen counter, shrugged off his jacket. "Okay. New rule. When it's just us, no lying. You're not fine. That's okay. You don't have to be." He moved to the sofa, settled in with practiced ease. "I'll be here if you need anything. Otherwise, I'll stay out of your way. I brought a book." He pulled a worn paperback from his bag, some sci-fi novel with a spaceship on the cover. Cassandra watched him crack it open, already half absorbed in the story, and felt something in her chest unlock slightly. Most people, faced with her carefully maintained walls, either tried to scale them or gave up. Hudson seemed content to just exist beside them, patient as water. The first week crawled past. Ruth arrived each morning at 8. Helped Cassandra with the humiliating necessities of bathing and dressing, then put her through exercises that left her sweating and shaking. Hudson arrived each night at 9:30, let himself in with the key, and took up residence on her sofa with his book or his laptop. They barely spoke. He was just there, a quiet presence that asked nothing and offered everything. Safety, constancy, the promise that if she fell, someone would hear. On the 8th night, Cassandra couldn't sleep. Pain radiated through her left side, the phantom ache of nerves rewiring themselves. She wheeled out of her bedroom to find Hudson awake, sketching something on a yellow legal pad. "Can't sleep either?" he asked without looking up. She moved closer, curious despite herself. The page was covered in architectural drawings, clean lines, precise measurements, notes in small print. "What is that?" Hudson held it up. "Your bathroom. I was thinking about how to make it more accessible without ruining the aesthetic. Rails here and here, a fold-down bench for the shower, maybe relocate the towel bar to somewhere you can actually reach it." He'd drawn her bathroom from memory, had apparently cataloged its problems, while pretending to read his sci-fi novels. "I used to be an architect," he continued, "before Finn was born. Worked at a firm that did high-end residential, mostly rich people who wanted homes that looked like museum installations. I was good at it." There was no bitterness in his tone, just simple fact. "Why'd you stop?" Cassandra asked. Hudson set down the pad. "Because my wife left when Finn was 3 months old. Said she couldn't handle a sick baby. Couldn't handle the fear of losing him. So she left us both." He said it calmly, but Cassandra heard the weight beneath the words. "I had to choose. The career that demanded 80-hour weeks, or the kid who needed his father. Wasn't really a choice at all." "You gave up everything," Cassandra said slowly. Hudson shook his head. "I gave up a job. I kept everything that mattered." He tapped the sketch. "Want me to make these modifications? I can do the work myself on my days off. Won't cost much beyond materials." The offer was too much, too generous, exactly the kind of thing Cassandra had spent her life refusing. But sitting there at 2 in the morning, hurting and tired and scared in ways she couldn't name, she found herself saying yes. Hudson smiled, the kind that reached his eyes. "Good. You need to be able to move around your own home. Independence matters." It was the first time anyone had acknowledged that what she'd lost wasn't just physical ability, but autonomy, the power to exist in the world on her own terms. Cassandra wheeled back to her room before he could see her cry. The second week, something shifted. Hudson started arriving earlier, bringing dinner from various restaurants in the neighborhood. They'd eat together at her dining table, and slowly, conversation replaced silence. He told her about Finn, the kid's obsession with dinosaurs, his uncanny ability to make friends with every dog in their building, the way he asked questions that had no easy answers. She found herself talking about her own childhood, about growing up poor in Queens, about the scholarship to Columbia that had been her ticket out, about building her company from nothing but ambition and student loan debt. Hudson listened without judgment, without the kind of inspirational poster platitudes people usually offered. When she talked about the board pressuring her to step down, he just nodded. "Vultures. They smell weakness." "I'm not weak," Cassandra snapped. "No," Hudson agreed. "You're healing. There's a difference, but people with something to gain won't see it that way." He cleared their plates, moving through her kitchen like he'd memorized the layout. "What are you going to do?" She didn't have an answer. The acquisition deadline was racing toward her, and every day away from the office made her more replaceable. Her CFO was sending daily emails, ostensibly updates, but really subtle indicators that he was handling things just fine without her. The vultures were indeed circling. "I don't know," she admitted. "I built that company from nothing. It's everything I am." Hudson loaded the dishwasher with economical movements. "Is it, though? Or is it just what you do?" The question hung in the air, unanswerable. Later that night, Cassandra tried to stand without her walker. She'd been practicing with Ruth, could manage a few steps with support, and pride demanded she try alone. The attempt went badly. She made it 3 feet from the wheelchair before her left leg betrayed her. The floor rushed up, and she hit hard, her head cracking against the coffee table on the way down. Pain exploded white behind her eyes. Hudson was there instantly, hands checking for blood, for broken bones, for signs of concussion. "Don't move. Where does it hurt?" She couldn't answer past the humiliation. She'd been so careful, so determined to prove she was getting better, and now she was sprawled on her own living room floor like an upended turtle, blood trickling from a cut above her eyebrow. Hudson grabbed a kitchen towel, pressed it gently to the wound. "Stay still. I'm calling Ruth." "No," Cassandra gasped out. "She'll tell the doctor. They'll make me go back to the hospital." The fear in her voice surprised her. When had she started being more afraid of hospitals than of bleeding? Hudson met her eyes, his own dark with concern. "This needs stitches. I can't fix this with Band-Aids." But he didn't reach for his phone. Instead, he scooped her up in one smooth motion, carried her to the sofa, and arranged pillows behind her back. "Hold pressure on that. I'll get the first aid kit." When he returned, he had supplies that hadn't been in her apartment before: butterfly bandages, medical tape, antiseptic that smelled like his apartment must smell. He worked quickly, efficiently, cleaning the wound with gentle precision. "This is temporary. You'll have a scar if we don't get real stitches." "I don't care about a scar," Cassandra said, and realized she meant it. Scars meant survival. Hudson finished bandaging, sat back on his heels. "Why'd you try to walk alone?" The question wasn't accusatory, just curious. Cassandra pressed her palms to her eyes, fighting tears. "Because I can't do this anymore, Hudson. I can't be this person who needs help to shower, who can't reach her own books, who falls down in her own living room. I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of pretending I'm strong when I can barely make it from my bed to my wheelchair without crying." The words came out raw and unfiltered, the truth she'd been hiding under layers of determination and stubborn pride. Hudson moved to sit beside her on the sofa, careful not to jostle her injured head. "Can I tell you something?" He didn't wait for permission. When Finn was in the NICU, hooked up to machines that breathed for him, fed him, did everything his body couldn't do, I used to sit beside his incubator and hate myself for being useless. I couldn't fix him, couldn't take his pain, couldn't do anything but sit there and watch him suffer. His voice had gone quiet, heavy with old grief. One night, I broke, just completely fell apart. This nurse found me crying in the waiting room, and you know what she said? She said, "Your son doesn't need you to be strong. He needs you to be here." Hudson turned to face Cassandra fully. That's what I learned, sitting in that hospital week after week. Strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up. And sometimes, it's about letting someone help you up. Cassandra felt something crack open inside her chest. "You don't understand. All my life, I've been the strong one, the one who solves problems, who fixes things, who never breaks. If I'm not that person, then who am I?" Hudson was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. "You know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who worked herself into a stroke because she didn't know how to stop. Someone so afraid of being weak that she'd rather die than ask for help." He held up a hand before she could protest. "I'm not judging. I did the same thing. Worked myself half to death trying to be everything Finn needed, until I realized that what he needed most was a father who was alive and present, not a martyr. So what do? The question came out small, defeated. Hudson smiled, sad but warm. You start by admitting you can't do this alone. Then you let the people who care about you help carry the weight. He stood, went to his backpack, and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Finn wanted me to give you this. He's been working on it all week. Cassandra unfolded it with shaking hands. It was another drawing, more detailed this time. A little boy holding hands with a woman, both of them walking toward a sun. At the bottom, in that same careful printing, Daddy says you need a reason. I can be your reason. And below that, smaller, probably written by Hudson, you don't need to walk to be whole. You just need to let someone walk beside you. Cassandra read the words once, twice, 3 times, feeling them sink beneath her skin. She'd been so focused on walking that she'd forgotten there were other ways to move through the world, other measures of wholeness that had nothing to do with physical ability. She looked up at Hudson, this man who'd given up his career for his son, who spent his nights watching over a stranger who'd never learned his name, who somehow knew exactly what she needed to hear. "Thank you," she said, inadequate but sincere. Hudson just nodded. "Get some rest. Tomorrow, Ruth is going to kill us both when she sees that cut." He was right. Ruth did nearly kill them. But she also didn't report it to the doctor. Just muttered about stubborn patients and reckless caregivers while cleaning the wound properly. And when she left that morning, she squeezed Cassandra's shoulder and said, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You look more alive than you have since you got home." Over the following weeks, something fundamental shifted. Cassandra stopped fighting her limitations and started working with them. She couldn't walk well yet, but she could wheel herself to the modified bathroom Hudson had built. She couldn't return to the office, but she could take conference calls from home, contributing ideas, if not daily oversight. She couldn't be the person she'd been before the stroke, but maybe that person had been heading toward destruction anyway. Hudson became a fixture in her life, arriving each night with dinner and stories about Finn's day. They'd eat together. Then he'd work on his laptop while she did her exercises, both of them existing in comfortable parallel. Sometimes they'd talk about architecture, about business strategy, about the strange intimacy of being vulnerable with someone who asked nothing in return. Other times they'd sit in silence, and that was good too. The third week, Hudson brought Finn to visit. The boy burst through the door like a small tornado, all energy and curiosity. "Hi, I'm Finn. Are you Cassandra? Daddy talks about you all the time." He scrambled up onto the sofa beside her, studying her face with 6-year-old intensity. "Why are you in a wheelchair? Can I push it?" "Daddy says I have to ask first before touching people's stuff." Cassandra found herself laughing for the first time in weeks. "I'm in a wheelchair because I'm learning to walk again, just like you did when you were little. And yes, you can push it if you're very careful." Finn's eyes went huge with delight. For the next hour, he wheeled her around the apartment, narrating everything he saw, asking questions about why she had so many books, and whether she'd read them all, and did she like dinosaurs, because he loved dinosaurs. Hudson watched from the kitchen, that small smile playing around his mouth. When Finn finally wore himself out and curled up on the sofa with one of Cassandra's art books, Hudson made coffee for them both. "Sorry, he's a lot." Cassandra shook her head. "He's perfect. When's the last time someone looked at me without pity?" It was true. Finn saw the wheelchair as an adventure, not a tragedy. He didn't treat her like she was fragile or broken. He just treated her like a person. "He likes you," Hudson said. "Keeps asking when we can visit again." Something warm bloomed in Cassandra's chest. Anytime. Really. And she meant it. Later, after they'd left, she sat in her living room and realized the apartment didn't feel empty anymore. Somewhere along the way, it had become a space that held laughter and crayon drawings and the ghost of a little boy's questions. It felt like home. The fourth week brought a crisis. Cassandra's CFO called with news. The board was meeting Friday to vote on her removal. They had the votes. The acquisition would go forward without her, and she'd be forced out of the company she'd built with her bare hands. Hudson found her that night staring out the window, silent tears tracking down her face. He didn't ask what was wrong. He just sat beside her and waited. Eventually, the story came out. 10 years of work, gone. Her identity, stripped away. Everything she'd sacrificed for, lost because her body had betrayed her. "I can't even fight back," she said bitterly. "I can't stand in that boardroom and make them see reason. I can't be there." Hudson was quiet for a long time. Then, "Do you want to be there?" Cassandra blinked. "What?" He turned to face her. "Do you want to be in that boardroom, fighting for a company that's ready to throw you away the second you're not useful? Or do you want something different?" The question stopped her cold. She'd been so focused on what she was losing that she hadn't considered whether she actually wanted to keep it. The company had consumed her life for a decade. It had cost her relationships, health, any chance at a life outside of quarterly reports and investor calls. It had nearly killed her. "I don't know," she admitted. Hudson nodded. "That's fair. But maybe think about it. Because from where I'm sitting, losing the company might be the best thing that ever happened to you." That night, she couldn't sleep. She wheeled herself around the apartment, thinking about Hudson's question. The modified bathroom caught her eye. The grab bars he'd installed with such care, the bench that folded down, the adjustable shower head positioned exactly where she could reach it. He'd rebuilt her space not to make her old life possible, but to make a new life livable. She thought about Finn's drawings on her refrigerator, about dinner conversations that had nothing to do with profit margins, about how she felt more herself in the past month than she had in years of corner office success. By the time morning came, she knew what she had to do. She called Paige at 7. "Set up a video call with the board. I'm not stepping down without having my say." Friday arrived. Ruth helped her dress in a blazer and actual pants instead of the soft loungewear she'd been living in. Cassandra positioned herself in front of her laptop, the city skyline visible through the windows behind her, and waited for the call to connect. 12 faces appeared on screen, the board members who held her fate in their hands. Her CFO, looking vaguely guilty. The chairman, expression carefully neutral. "Ms. Monroe, we're glad you could join us." There was pity in his voice, and it made her spine straighten. "I'll be brief," Cassandra said. "I know why you're meeting today. You want to remove me as CEO, and honestly, you're probably right to consider it. I had a stroke because I worked myself to the point of collapse. That's not leadership. That's martyrdom masquerading as dedication." The board members shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the speech they'd expected. No desperate pleas, no promises to return stronger than ever. "Here's what I propose," Cassandra continued. "I'll step down as CEO, effective immediately. Promote Mark to the position. He's been doing the work anyway." Her CFO looked stunned. "But I want to stay on as a consultant. Creative director, if you will. I'll work remotely, 20 hours a week, focusing on the things I'm actually good at. Design vision, client relationships, strategic planning. Not the day-to-day operations that were killing me." She paused. Gauging reactions. "I built this company. I know it better than anyone. But I also know I can't run it the way I was. So let me contribute differently. Or let me go entirely. Either way, I'll survive." The chairman muted his microphone to confer with the others. Cassandra sat still, hands folded in her lap, and felt strangely peaceful. She'd done what she came to do. The outcome was beyond her control now. After 5 minutes, that felt like 5 hours, the chairman unmuted. "We accept your proposal. 20 hours weekly, consultant role. We'll hammer out the details with legal. Ms. Monroe, thank you for your service and for understanding." The call ended. Just like that, a decade of her life transformed into something new. Cassandra closed the laptop and discovered Hudson standing in the doorway, Finn beside him. "We came early," Hudson said. "Wanted to be here when you got the news. How'd it go?" "I quit," Cassandra said and started laughing. The sound surprised her, bright and genuine, and maybe slightly hysterical. "I walked away. Well, rolled away. Whatever." Finn ran over and threw his arms around her neck. "Did you win?" he asked seriously. Cassandra hugged him back, breathing in the smell of kid shampoo and playground dust. "Yeah, buddy. I think I did." The months that followed were both harder and easier than anything Cassandra had experienced. Physical therapy became her job. Painful, exhausting, often demoralizing work that required showing up every day, even when progress felt glacial. But slowly, incrementally, her body remembered how to obey. She graduated from wheelchair to walker to cane to walking unassisted for short distances. Each milestone felt like climbing Everest. Ruth cheered every victory. Hudson brought champagne when she walked across her apartment without falling. Finn made a banner that read, "Congratulations, you can walk now," and hung it crooked in her hallway. The company moved forward without her in a leadership role, and the world didn't end. Mark proved to be a solid CEO, better at managing people, more patient with the bureaucratic nonsense she'd always hated. Her consultant role let her focus on the creative work she loved while maintaining boundaries she'd never believed in before. 20 hours a week. No emails after 8 p.m. Actual weekends. It felt like a life instead of an endurance test. Hudson stopped being her caregiver around month 3. She didn't need one anymore. But he kept coming over, and the nature of the visits shifted. They'd cook dinner together, Finn helping by making tremendous messes and asking philosophical questions about whether dinosaurs would like pizza. They'd watch movies with Finn between them, the kid providing running commentary through every scene. They'd talk late into the night after Finn fell asleep, conversations that ranged from architecture to parenthood to what it meant to build a life worth living. Somewhere in there, the space between them, physical and emotional, kept shrinking. Cassandra caught herself watching Hudson's hands as he chopped vegetables, noticing the precise way he moved through kitchen tasks. She found herself disappointed on the rare nights he couldn't visit. She started buying Finn's favorite snacks and keeping them stocked. The realization crept up slowly, then hit all at once. She was in love with him. With both of them, really. With the life they'd accidentally assembled in her apartment. The 4th month, everything came to a head. Cassandra had a nightmare, one of the bad ones where she was back on that hallway floor, unable to move, unable to call for help, dying alone. She woke, gasping, disoriented in the dark. Old instinct had her reaching for the phone to call Hudson before she remembered it was 3 a.m., and he wasn't her caregiver anymore, but her hand was already dialing. He picked up on the 2nd ring, voice rough with sleep. "Cass, what's wrong?" She almost hung up, almost pretended it was a pocket dial. Instead, she said, "I had a nightmare about that night. I needed to hear your voice. I needed to know I'm not alone." Silence on the other end, long enough that she thought he'd hung up. Then, "Stay on the line. I'm coming over." "Hudson, you don't have to." But he'd already disconnected. 20 minutes later, her doorbell rang. Hudson stood there in sweatpants and a Columbia hoodie, hair sticking up on one side, eyes worried. "Are you okay?" Cassandra stepped back to let him in, suddenly aware she was wearing an old t-shirt and boxer shorts. No makeup, hair a mess. Being seen like this should have felt vulnerable. Instead, it felt right. "I'm okay. I'm sorry I woke you. I just panicked." Hudson moved into the apartment, straight to the kitchen to make tea like he lived there, which, in some ways, he did. "Don't apologize. I told you. You're not alone in this. I meant it." He handed her a mug of chamomile, steam curling between them. "Want to talk about it?" She did. The words spilled out. The fear that it would happen again. That next time she wouldn't be lucky, that she'd lose everything she'd rebuilt. Hudson listened without interrupting, and when she finished, he set down his mug and took her hands. "Come here," he said, and pulled her into a hug. She went stiff for a moment. Physical affection still felt foreign, dangerous, then melted against him. He was warm and solid and real, and she could feel his heartbeat steady beneath her cheek. They stood there in her kitchen, holding each other while the city slept around them, and something fundamental shifted. "I can't imagine my life without you in it," Cassandra whispered. "You and Finn. You've become—" She couldn't finish the sentence, but Hudson understood anyway. "We feel the same way," he said into her hair. "Finn asks about you every day. Wants to know when we're seeing Cass again, what she's doing. If she's getting stronger. And me." He pulled back enough to look at her face. "I think I fell for you that first night, when you said, 'Please,' like you'd forgotten how to ask for anything. You were so vulnerable and so fierce at the same time. I wanted to protect you and challenge you in equal measure." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "I still do." Cassandra's breath caught. "Hudson, I'm a mess. I'm still figuring out who I am without the company. I'm still learning how to walk without falling. I don't have anything together." "Good," Hudson said. "Neither do I. We can figure it out together." And then he kissed her. It was gentle and tentative and perfect, the kind of kiss that tasted like chamomile tea and new beginnings. When they broke apart, Cassandra was crying again, but this time from relief. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I've spent my whole life being independent. Needing someone feels like weakness." Hudson smiled, that warm expression she'd come to crave. "It's not weakness, it's being human. We're pack animals, Cass. We need each other. There's no shame in that." He kissed her forehead. "Besides, you've been letting me need you for months now. Finn needs you. I need you. Fair's fair. Let us return the favor." They spent the rest of the night on her sofa, talking through fears and hopes and logistics. Hudson had lease issues. His apartment was month to month, and the landlord kept raising rent. Finn needed a better school district. Cassandra's penthouse had 3 bedrooms sitting empty. The solution seemed obvious, but both of them danced around it until dawn started lightening the sky. Finally, Hudson said it. "Move in with us. Or we'll move in with you. Whatever makes sense. But let's stop pretending we're not already a family." Cassandra looked at him, this man who'd saved her life and then taught her how to live it, and said the easiest yes of her life. They'd figure out the details later. Right now, she just wanted to sit here with him and watch the sunrise over the city that had nearly killed her, and instead gave her everything that mattered. 1 year later, Cassandra stood in the lobby of a new building, modest by Manhattan standards, but perfect for their purposes. The sign above the door read, "Blake and Monroe Design, accessible architecture for modern living." Hudson had designed the space, and she'd secured the funding through contacts in her old industry. They specialized in residential modifications for people with disabilities, working with families to create homes that were both beautiful and functional. It turned out there was a massive market for architects who understood that accessibility didn't mean sacrificing aesthetics. Their first year had exceeded every projection. But more than the business success, Cassandra loved the work itself. Meeting clients, understanding their needs, solving problems that actually mattered. No more chasing quarterly earnings, no more sacrificing health for ambition. Just good work that helped people, done alongside someone she loved. Finn came barreling through the door, school backpack bouncing. Cass, guess what I learned today? At 7 now, he'd grown 3 inches and lost 2 front teeth, but his enthusiasm remained at tornado levels. We learned about the brain in science class, and I told everyone about how you had a stroke and your brain fixed itself and now you help people. And Miss Patterson said I could bring you to class to talk about it. Cassandra laughed, scooping him into a hug. We'll have to ask your teacher about that. It's a pretty intense topic for 2nd grade. Finn squeezed her tight. But it's a good story. You fell down and Daddy found you, and then you got better, and now we're a family. That's a really good story. Hudson emerged from the back office, plans rolled under one arm. He's been practicing that speech all week, fair warning. He kissed Cassandra in greeting, easy and familiar, then ruffled Finn's hair. Go wash up, buddy. We're ordering pizza for dinner. Finn rocketed toward the bathroom, still talking about brain plasticity and neural pathways. Hudson shook his head. That kid is going to be a neuroscientist, or a professional question asker. Cassandra leaned into him, comfortable in a way she'd never been comfortable with anyone. He's going to be amazing, because he has you. Hudson squeezed her waist. He has us. That's the point. They locked up the office and headed home. Not the penthouse anymore, but a brownstone in Brooklyn, with enough space for all 3 of them and a yard where Finn could terrorize the neighborhood dogs. The commute was longer, but the life was better. As they walked, Cassandra found herself reflecting on that night a year ago, lying on cold marble and begging for help. She'd thought she was at her lowest point. Turned out she'd been at a crossroads. The stroke had stripped away everything she'd built her identity on: the career, the corner office, the myth of invincibility. What remained was harder to define, but infinitely more real. She was someone who could ask for help now. Someone who could receive love without calculating what she owed in return. Someone who measured success in family dinners and client smiles instead of stock prices. Someone who could walk, yes, but more importantly, someone who knew how to let others walk beside her. What are you thinking about? Hudson asked, noticing her distant expression. Cassandra smiled up at him, then down at Finn, who was now explaining the plot of a dinosaur movie to a confused pigeon. I'm thinking about that thing you told me the night you found me, about needing a reason to stand. Hudson's expression softened, remembering. I found mine, Cassandra continued. You and Finn. This life we built. It's not what I thought I wanted, but it's exactly what I needed. Hudson stopped walking, pulled her close despite Finn's theatrical gagging. You know what I think? I think you found something more important than a reason to stand. He kissed her, quick and sure. You found a reason to stay. That night, after pizza and homework battles, and Finn's elaborate bedtime negotiation tactics, Cassandra stood in their living room looking at the wall of family photos. There was one from Finn's 7th birthday party, all 3 of them covered in cake frosting, laughing. Another from their first client success, standing in front of a home they'd modified for a veteran in a wheelchair. A candid shot Hudson had taken of her and Finn at the park, her face relaxed in a way her old corporate headshots had never captured. These were the moments that mattered. Not board meetings or acquisition deals, but the ordinary magic of being known and loved and necessary to someone else's happiness. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd had to lose the ability to walk before she learned how to truly stand, had to lose everything before she found what was worth keeping. Hudson appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Finn's finally asleep. Only took 3 stories and a promise of pancakes tomorrow. Cassandra leaned back against him, grateful for his solid warmth. "I love you," she said, simple and true. He rested his chin on her shoulder. "I know. I love you too." They stood there, watching the city lights through their brownstone windows, 3 heartbeats away from where her old life ended. Sometimes, Cassandra thought about that other version of herself, the woman who'd worked 80-hour weeks and measured her worth in profit margins. She didn't miss her. That woman had been hollow at the core, filling emptiness with achievement. This version of herself, scarred and slower and softer, was whole in ways the old Cassandra had never imagined possible. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for finding me that night, for staying, for teaching me that needing someone isn't the same as being weak." Hudson turned her around to face him. "You taught me something too, that it's okay to want more than just survival, that I could have a partner, not just someone I'm taking care of, that I deserve to be loved, not just needed." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "We saved each other. That's how the best stories go." And he was right. This was the best story, not because it was easy or perfect, but because it was true. They'd found each other at their lowest points and chose to build something new from the wreckage. No dramatic gestures, no miracle cures. Just 2 people and a kid learning to walk through life together, one imperfect step at a time. Later, lying in bed with Hudson's breathing steady beside her, Cassandra thought about that secret he'd whispered in the hospital, the one that had changed everything. You don't need to walk to be whole. You just need to let someone walk beside you. She'd spent her entire life trying to be self-sufficient, believing that independence was the highest virtue. The stroke had forced her to accept help, to admit vulnerability, to build a life that required other people. And in doing so, she'd discovered the truth that no amount of success had ever taught her, that wholeness doesn't come from standing alone. It comes from choosing to stand together, from letting yourself be seen, be helped, be loved in all your broken places, from understanding that the strongest thing you can do is admit you can't do everything. She reached over and laced her fingers through Hudson's. Even in sleep, he squeezed back, an automatic gesture of connection. Cassandra closed her eyes and let herself drift, secure in the knowledge that if she fell, someone would be there to catch her. Not because she was weak, but because that's what people who love each other do. They show up. They stay. They walk beside you through the hard parts and celebrate the victories and remind you, on the days when you forget, that you're not alone. That you never were. That the moment you stopped trying to be invincible and started trying to be human, that was when you finally learned to stand. The city hummed outside their windows, full of other people with other stories. But this one was theirs. A woman who'd collapsed and couldn't walk. A janitor who'd whispered a secret that changed everything. A little boy who needed both of them. And a life built not on perfection or power, but on the radical, terrifying, beautiful act of letting yourself be known. Cassandra smiled in the dark. She could walk now, had relearned through months of painful practice. But the real miracle wasn't the walking. It was learning that she didn't have to make the journey alone, that the person beside her wasn't there because she'd earned it or because he pitied her, but because he chose her, every day. Scars and struggles and all, and she chose him right back. That was the secret. That was everything.